In the heart of Africa, where the sun touched the wide river and the forests whispered with old secrets, people lived with both respect and fear. They believed the river was alive. It could bless, but it could also curse. It gave fish to the hungry, but it could also take lives with its floods. The elders always told the children, never play near the river at night, for spirits guard it. They are not like us. They are half human, half spirit, and their anger is stronger than fire. Among the people was a fisherman named Komba. He was tall but thin, with a face hard like stone. His family was poor. His wife often sat by the fire with empty pots. His children cried for food. Komba's heart was heavy. Every day, he walked to the river with his nets, hoping for fish. But day after day, the nets came back empty. He grew tired, weak, and bitter. The villagers mocked him, whispering, "The river has rejected Komba. He is cursed. Even the fish run from him." At night, he lay awake listening to the sounds of the forest. He thought of his children's thin faces. He thought of his wife's tired eyes. But instead of seeking peace, his heart filled with anger. He said to himself, "Why should I be poor while others eat well? Why does the river hate me? I will find a way to take what I deserve." One evening, when the moon rose red and round above the trees, Komba sat by the river repairing his torn net. The air was quiet, almost too quiet. Even the frogs stopped croaking. The water shimmered with strange silver light. Then he saw it. On a rock in the middle of the river sat a small mermaid. She was not like the women of the village. Her skin glowed like polished copper. Her hair fell in long braids, decorated with river shells that shined like stars. Her tail glistened like bronze, moving gently in the water. And she was singing. The song floated across the water like a dream. It was soft, but powerful. The trees leaned closer, and the wind hushed to listen. Even Komba's heart, so hard with anger, began to beat faster. The sound wrapped around him like warm smoke. Komba froze. He had heard many stories about the river spirits. Some said they brought fortune and filled nets with fish. Others said they dragged men into the deep and cursed their families forever. But when Komba looked at her, he did not feel fear. He felt greed. His eyes burned with desire. He whispered to himself, "This is my chance. If I catch her, I will be rich. She will bring me gold, fish, and power. The whole village will bow before me. My suffering will end." The mermaid sang louder, her voice like silver bells. Komba's hands shook as he picked up his net. He moved closer to the river's edge, silent as a snake. The moonlight fell on the mermaid's face. Her eyes glowed green like fireflies. She looked so young, almost like a child, yet her beauty carried the weight of the river itself. Still, Komba thought only of himself. He remembered the laughter of the villagers, the hunger of his family, the anger in his chest. His greed grew stronger than his fear. He raised his net slowly, his eyes fixed on her shining form. The song wrapped around him, but he pushed his heart to stay hard. "She will be mine," he said under his breath. And in that moment, the river grew still, as if it too was holding its breath. What Komba did not know was this: the little mermaid was no ordinary spirit. She was a messenger of the deep, and in her song lived both blessing and curse. Whoever touched her would awaken something ancient in the waters, something no man could control. But Komba could not see this truth. He saw only treasure. And so, as the moon glowed and the forest waited, Komba prepared to strike. The story of his fate was about to begin. The night was quiet, yet Komba's heart beat like a drum in his chest. The little mermaid sat on the rock, still singing her sweet, haunting song. Her voice was soft like honey, but it carried power, like waves crashing in the ocean. Komba's eyes glowed with greed. He thought only of wealth. He whispered to himself, "This is my moment. She will bring me fortune. My hunger will end." Slowly, he stepped closer to the water. The sand was cool under his feet, and the moonlight guided his way. He lifted his net, his hands trembling. The mermaid seemed unaware of him. She combed her long braided hair with a shell, her tail glowing with bronze light. Komba moved like a hunter, silent and careful. But inside his heart, fear battled with greed. He remembered the old stories. Do not touch the river spirits. They are not human. They carry curses deeper than the ocean. For a moment, his steps slowed. He almost turned back. But then he thought of his children crying from hunger, his wife's tired face, and the mocking laughter of the villagers. His greed grew stronger than his fear. With one quick leap, Komba threw his net. The mermaid screamed. It was no ordinary scream. It shook the trees, it stirred the river, it made birds scatter into the night sky. The water splashed wildly as she fought, her tail flashing like lightning in the moonlight. Komba pulled hard, his muscles burning, but his determination stronger. He dragged her from the rock onto the shore. She twisted and cried, but the net was thick, and his grip was like iron. The mermaid's green eyes burned with sorrow and anger. Her tears glowed as they fell onto the sand, shining like drops of fireflies. "Release me," she begged, her voice echoing like thunder underwater. "If you keep me, you will bring ruin upon yourself and your house." But Komba only laughed, a laugh full of pride and madness. He tied her with rope, ignoring her cries. "You will not harm me," he said. "You are mine now. You will bring me treasure, you will fill my nets, and the village will bow before me." The mermaid struggled again, but her strength began to fade. She looked at him with eyes that seemed to see far beyond the world of men. She spoke slowly, her words heavy like stones. "You think you have captured me, but you have captured your own destruction." Komba shook his head. He refused to listen. He dragged her toward his hut near the riverbank. The night seemed darker as he walked. The moon hid behind clouds, and the forest grew silent. Even the wind no longer moved. When he reached his hut, his wife and children gasped. His wife whispered in fear, "Komba, what have you done? That is no child. That is a spirit of the river. Release her before the curse falls upon us." But Komba shouted, "Be silent, woman. This is our fortune. The river has finally blessed me. From now on, we will live like kings." He built a small cage from bamboo and placed the mermaid inside. She did not fight anymore. She only sat quietly, her eyes glowing in the darkness, watching him. As the night grew deeper, strange things began to happen. The air inside the hut turned cold. The firewood crackled and died without reason. The children could not sleep. They cried and clung to their mother. Outside, the river stirred. Its waves slapped against the bank, stronger and stronger, as if angry. Frogs croaked in strange tones, and the wind carried a smell of rot. But Komba, blind with greed, saw none of this. He sat proudly beside his cage, staring at the mermaid as if she were a golden treasure. In a soft voice, the mermaid spoke again. Her words floated in the cold air. "The curse has already begun." And at that moment, the river let out a deep roar, as if the water itself had awakened from a long sleep. At dawn, the village woke to a strange sight. Komba walked proudly toward the river, carrying his net. He felt stronger than he had in many months. His steps were firm, and his eyes burned with hope. He cast his net into the wide water. Within moments, it was heavy. When he pulled it out, it overflowed with fish, fat silver fish, more than he had seen in all his years. His mouth stretched into a smile. He filled basket after basket. The villagers stared in shock. "How is this possible?" they whispered. "Komba, who could never catch a fish, now brings more than the river itself can carry." Some bowed their heads. Others shook with jealousy. But Komba's chest swelled with pride. He shouted, "The river has blessed me. At last, I am the man of fortune." He returned home with his catch, his children's eyes wide with hunger. His wife cooked the fish, and they ate until their bellies were full. For the first time in months, there was laughter in the house. But while the family feasted, the mermaid sat in her cage, her eyes calm, her lips silent. She did not eat, she did not drink. She only watched. When night came, the joy faded. Strange things began to happen. The children cried without reason, their voices sharp and endless. They clutched their stomachs though they had eaten well. Their skin grew pale. His wife lay weak on the mat, her breath shallow. Komba frowned but said, "It is nothing. They are only tired from hunger. Tomorrow they will be strong." Yet the air inside the hut grew heavy, colder than the river itself. The fire refused to burn. Shadows clung to the walls like dark hands. Outside, the river roared louder than before. Its waters slapped against the bank. The villagers looked out from their huts and felt fear. "The river is angry," they whispered. "Something has been disturbed." That night, as Komba tried to sleep, he woke to a strange sound. At first, he thought it was the wind. But then he realized it was a song. The mermaid was singing again. Her voice was not sweet like before. It was sharp and bitter, like broken glass. The song crawled into his ears, into his bones, filling him with dread. He covered his ears, but the sound was inside his mind. "You cannot escape," she whispered between the notes. "The curse has begun. Your fish will rot, your house will fall, and your name will be lost in shame." Komba shouted at her, "Be silent. You are mine. You will give me treasure, not curses." But the mermaid only smiled, her eyes glowing green in the darkness. By morning, Komba's nets were full again. He carried basket after basket to the market. Villagers rushed to buy from him. His pockets filled with coins, his arms heavy with wealth. Yet, as the sun set, the curse returned stronger. The fish that were not sold began to rot. A smell of death filled his hut. His children cried again. His wife's lips turned blue. One of the elders came to him and said, "Komba, listen to the river. Release what you have taken, or the curse will destroy you." But Komba's heart was blind. He saw only gold. He shouted, "You are jealous. I will not release her. She is my blessing, my fortune, my power." The elder shook his head and walked away. He knew what was coming. That night, thunder shook the sky. Lightning cracked across the river. The water rose high, higher than the banks, as if reaching for Komba's hut. The mermaid spoke once more, her voice calm but strong. "You think you have one. But what you hold is not a blessing. It is a chain. And it will pull you down into the deep." Komba sat in silence, the words echoing in his heart. But his pride kept him still. And outside, the river prepared its revenge. The village woke to strange news. The river, once calm, had turned restless. Its waters rose higher, carrying dead fish to the shore. The air smelled of rot. Women who came to fetch water screamed and ran back, saying the river was red like blood. Fear spread like fire. The elders gathered under the great baobab tree. They whispered, "The spirits are angry. Someone has broken the law of the river." But Komba walked proudly through the village with baskets of fish and pockets full of coins. He ignored the whispers. He laughed at their fear. "The river has blessed me," he shouted. "Why do you tremble? You are only jealous." Yet behind him, children coughed. Old men clutched their chests. The curse was already moving through the land. At home, his wife grew weaker. Her skin lost its color, her eyes sank deep, and her voice turned faint. The children no longer played. They sat in corners, shivering, their cries soft and hollow. The mermaid stayed in her cage, quiet and calm. She did not eat, she did not drink. But her eyes followed Komba everywhere. At night, when he tried to sleep, her voice returned. "You cannot run," she whispered. "You cannot hide. The curse is alive." Komba pressed his hands against his ears. He told himself he was strong. He told himself the fish and the coins proved the mermaid was a blessing. But deep inside, a small seed of fear had already grown. That week, storms struck the river. Rain poured like knives. Lightning tore the sky. The villagers' huts flooded. Goats and chickens were washed away. Fields that once grew maize and millet lay ruined under the water. The villagers came together and cried out, "This is not natural. The river wants revenge." They went to Komba's hut. They saw the mermaid locked inside the bamboo cage, her tail glimmering even in the dark. Their hearts filled with terror. Some fell to the ground and covered their faces. One brave elder stepped forward. His voice shook, but his words were strong. "Komba, you fool. You have stolen from the river. That child is not yours. She is a spirit, a messenger of the deep. Release her before we all perish." Komba's pride flared like fire. He shouted back, "She is mine. She fills my nets. She brings me gold. Why should I release her? You all wish you had what I have." The villagers cried out in anger and fear. "You are cursed, and you are cursing us all. The floods are destroying our homes. The sickness is spreading. If you do not free her, you will bring death to the whole village." But Komba turned his back. He dragged the cage inside and closed the door. "Let them suffer," he muttered. "I will not lose my treasure." That night, the river roared louder than before. The ground shook as if the earth itself was angry. The villagers could not sleep. They huddled together, praying to the ancestors. Inside the hut, Komba sat near the cage, his eyes wide and restless. The mermaid looked at him without fear. Her voice was soft but sharp. "You have chosen greed over life. You think you own me, but it is the curse that owns you. Every fish you touch will rot. Every coin you hide will turn to dust. Every smile in your home will vanish. You cannot fight the river." As she spoke, the fire in the hut died suddenly. The air grew colder, heavy like stone. Komba's children cried again. His wife coughed blood. Komba shook his head, refusing to believe. But when he looked at the mermaid's glowing eyes, he felt a shiver crawl down his spine. For the first time, doubt entered his heart. And outside, the river rose higher, reaching for his hut like a giant hand. By the fifth night, the river had swallowed half the farmlands. Strong trees that had stood for generations fell like grass. Goats and chickens vanished in the rushing waters. Even the hunters who dared to enter the forest returned empty-handed, their faces pale with fear. The curse was no longer only in Komba's hut. It was in every corner of the village. Children cried with empty stomachs. Mothers wept because their clay pots returned from the river with only red water, no fish. Old men shook their heads and whispered that death was coming. The people gathered again under the great baobab tree. This time, their voices were louder, their anger hotter. One woman stood with tears in her eyes. Her baby had died from the strange sickness that spread after the flood. She cried, "It is because of Komba. He keeps the mermaid. He curses us all." The crowd roared in agreement. Men raised sticks. Women lifted stones. Even children shouted, "Free her, free her." But Komba stood firm. His pride was like iron. He told them, "You are weak because you do not know the river's secret. I am strong because I captured it. Do not blame me for your suffering. Blame your own fear." The crowd gasped. His words cut them like knives. Anger burned in their hearts. That night, a group of young men crept to Komba's hut. They carried machetes and torches. Their plan was simple: break the cage, free the mermaid, and end the curse. But as they came close, a strange wind blew. Their torches went out. The ground shook, and the river roared like a lion. In the dark, they heard the mermaid's voice, calm and heavy. "Go back. The curse is not yours to carry. It belongs to the one who chained me." The young men dropped their machetes and ran. Their screams echoed through the night. By dawn, the whole village knew what had happened. Fear spread deeper. People began to leave their huts and sleep on higher ground. They no longer trusted Komba. They no longer spoke to him. He became a stranger among his own people. Inside his hut, Komba's wife lay weak. Her eyes begged for mercy. She whispered, "Husband, please, Release her. Let the river forgive us. But Komba refused. He touched the gold coins hidden under his mat and smiled bitterly. If I release her, I lose everything. Without her, I am nothing. The mermaid looked at him with steady eyes. She spoke again. You are already nothing. You trade your soul for dust. The river waits. Soon, it will take all. Komba's children grew thinner each day. They cried for food, but the baskets were empty. The once happy songs in the village were gone. Only silence and mourning remained. Then one morning, the elders called for a final gathering. The drum was beaten, and every man, woman, and child came to the circle. The chief himself, an old man with white hair, stood before them. He raised his staff and said, "The spirits have spoken. This village cannot carry the curse of one man. If Komba refuses to free the mermaid, we must cast him out. His hut, his land, and his name will be erased." The crowd cheered. Hope flickered in their hearts. Perhaps by cutting Komba away, the curse would end. When Komba heard the judgment, his pride finally cracked. He shouted, "No! You cannot do this to me. I am the one who fed you with fish. I am the one who showed you riches. Without me, you are nothing." But the villagers had made their choice. That night, they surrounded his hut with fire. They did not touch the mermaid, for they feared her. But they shouted at Komba to leave, to take his curse with him. The mermaid, still calm in her cage, whispered one last time, "The curse does not end by exile. The river's hand is not done." And as her words echoed, the ground shook harder than before, and the river began to move toward the heart of the village. The night Komba was cast out, the moon hid behind thick clouds. The villagers pushed him away with burning torches and angry voices. His wife clung to him, crying, while his children trembled in fear. But no one came to help. "Go," the chief shouted. "Take your curse with you. The village will not die because of your pride." Komba gathered his wife and children. He carried a sack filled with gold coins, but his face showed no tears. His pride was still unbroken, even as his people turned their backs. The mermaid remained locked in her cage, glowing faintly in the darkness. Her eyes followed Komba. She spoke softly, almost like a song. "You may walk far, but the river walks farther. You may hide high, but the river climbs higher. Until you release me, the curse will never leave your shadow." Komba ignored her. He turned away, clutching his sack of riches. His children cried for food, but he pressed them forward into the wilderness. Behind them, the village tried to rest. But peace did not come. The river roared all night. The ground shook. Huts crumbled. By morning, half the village was under water. The people wailed. They had driven Komba away, but still the curse stayed with them. Mothers cried, "The mermaid is still chained. The river will not stop." The chief bowed his head. "It is not the village that must release her. It is the man who bound her. Until Komba bends, we will suffer." Far from the village, Komba and his family wandered through the forest. Hunger burned in their bellies. His wife was weak, his children tired. Yet Komba's pride was like a wall of stone. One night, while they rested under a tree, a terrible storm came. The sky opened with rain. Thunder rolled like drums of war. Lightning flashed and showed the shadow of the mermaid in the storm clouds. She spoke again, her voice carried by the wind. "Komba, release me. Or your children will pay the price." Komba shook his head, his eyes fierce. "No. If I free you, all my struggles are wasted. My power, my wealth, it will vanish." His wife whispered, "What is wealth if our children die? What is power if you are alone?" But Komba covered his ears. He refused to listen. Days passed. The sack of gold grew useless. There was no market in the forest, no trader to take his coins. His wife grew sick. His children grew thinner. Still, he held the cage tightly, as if it were his only treasure. Then, one evening, they came to a wide plain. In the middle stood a single tree with roots sunk deep into the earth. At its base was a pool of water, calm and clear. Komba's children ran to drink, but the water turned red the moment their lips touched it. They screamed and pulled back. The mermaid's voice rose again from the cage. This land rejects you. The river follows you. Wherever you go, my chains will poison the ground. For the first time, fear cracked Komba's heart. He looked at his children, too weak to stand. He looked at his wife, pale and silent. His pride began to feel heavy, heavier than the cage he carried. That night, as he sat alone, Komba whispered to himself, "What have I done? I thought I held power, but maybe power holds me." The mermaid's eyes glowed brighter. She said, "It is not too late, Komba. Break the chains, and the river may forgive." But before he could answer, the ground trembled violently. The tree split in half. The pool rose into a great wave that crashed toward him. His children screamed. His wife cried out his name. The river had found him again. The wave rose like a giant hand of water, ready to crush Komba and his family. His children clung to him, crying. His wife fell to her knees, her weak voice trembling. "Komba, this is the end, unless you change." The cage shook in his hands. The mermaid's glow grew brighter, her eyes burning like fire and water together. She cried out, her voice louder than the storm. "Komba, choose. Your pride or your blood. Your gold or your children. Release me, or all will drown." For the first time, Komba's knees bent. His body shook. The gold sack slipped from his hand and spilled into the mud. The coins glittered, but no one cared. His wife closed her eyes, whispering prayers. His children clung tighter, their small hands shaking. Komba's heart tore inside. All his life, he had believed power came from holding tighter. But now, in the roaring storm, he saw the truth. The tighter he held, the more he lost. He raised the cage high. The chains clinked like snakes. He shouted to the sky, his voice breaking. "Take my pride, take my gold, but spare my family." With shaking hands, he smashed the lock against a stone. Once, twice, 3 times. At last, the lock broke, and the chains fell away. The cage burst open. Light poured out like 1,000 suns. The mermaid rose into the air, her hair flowing like rivers, her eyes glowing with both fury and mercy. The storm stopped. The wave froze, then dropped harmlessly to the ground. The trembling earth grew calm. The pool turned clear again. Komba fell to his knees, weak and shaking. His children cried, but now with relief. His wife looked up, hope shining in her eyes. The mermaid floated above them. Her voice was softer now, but carried the weight of oceans. "Komba, you chained me for your hunger. You cursed your people for your pride. But you have broken the chains. The river forgives, but it does not forget." Komba bowed his head. For the first time in his life, tears fell from his eyes. "I was blind," he whispered. "Forgive me." The mermaid looked at him for a long moment. Then she touched the ground with her hand. The earth healed. Flowers grew where the cage had been. The red water turned sweet. The sky cleared, showing 1,000 stars. She turned to Komba's children and smiled. "Drink now, little ones. The curse is lifted." They rushed to the pool and drank deeply. This time, the water was pure and cool. Strength returned to their bodies, and laughter burst out between their tears. Komba's wife held his arm and whispered, "You saved us, not with gold, but with surrender." The mermaid's form began to fade, melting into the water. Her last words echoed like a song. "Remember, humans, chains always break, but hearts must bend first." Then she was gone. The pool rippled once and stilled. Komba sat in silence. His gold lay scattered in the mud, useless and forgotten. His wife leaned against him, his children asleep beside them. For the first time, he felt lighter not because he gained, but because he let go. Days later, they returned to the village. The people, who had suffered from floods and hunger, saw them coming. At first, anger flared in their eyes. But when they saw the clear river flowing again, their hearts softened. Komba stood before them, not as a proud man, but as a broken one. "I was wrong," he told them. "I chained what should have been free. I cursed all of you with my pride. I cannot ask for your forgiveness, but I ask for your mercy." The chief looked at him. Then the old man nodded slowly. "You are no longer the Komba we knew. Perhaps suffering has made you a man." The villagers lifted their hands in peace. Children laughed again as they played by the river. Komba lived quietly after that. He built no cages, gathered no gold. Instead, he taught his children that the greatest strength was not in holding, but in letting go. And whenever the river shone in the moonlight, people remembered the tale of the chained mermaid. They whispered its warning for generations. Greed may build chains, but only humility can break them.